Hello, I'm Julian Northbrook from doingenglish.com. I'm just sitting here typing up the literature review for my PhD thesis. And as I'm doing that, it occurs to me that researchers have been arguing pretty much the same thing now for coming up to 50 years. Things that still educational institutions, that is ESL schools where English is taught, you, the language learner, still are not taking on board these ideas. And that is quite simply the idea that native speakers do not speak using grammar rules and words alone. And therefore, if you, the non-native speaker, wants to speak in a native-like way, you've got to learn to speak in the way that they actually speak. I mean, if we go all the way back to Hymes, 1972, and his taxonomy of situational communicative competence, one of the most important elements for our discussion here that he highlighted was what he called done language, as opposed to possible but not probable, unlikely language. Bollinger, 1975, suggested that language is far more memory-based than was generally considered at the time, where syntax, that is, grammar rule, was considered everything. And he suggested that actually language consists of lexical elements, that is what I call chunks, that on occasion may not even be describable using grammar rules, not as such anyway. I mean, take for example expressions such as thanks very much, which while very, very natural, very, very frequent in native speaker conversation, is actually ungrammatical. Pauline Sider, 1983, suggested that there were two puzzles for native-like proficiency in a language, what they called native-like fluency and native-like selection. The latter meaning, once again, just as Hymes and Bollinger argued, that native speakers aren't just using grammatical language. That in and of itself is not enough to explain how we speak. Rather, we select native-like language, that is, chunks of language, lexical elements that we are able to just line up and use as are. And that is why we sound so natural, because we're not processing language using words and rules. Rather, we are speaking in chunks, blocks of English. And if you, the non-native speaker, wants to speak in a native-like way, as I've said, well, you've got to learn to speak in this way. Otherwise, as Skian, 1998, very rightly points out, learners who restrict themselves to item and rule approaches to language will be forever marked as non-members of the speech community they aspire to. Or to put it another way, if you stick to the traditional words and rules, that is, memorizing yet more vocabulary, studying yet more grammar rules approach to the learning of English, well, you will forever be seen as a non-native-like speaker of English, because that's not how native speakers are speaking. And until you start to speak in the way that we actually speak, you won't start to develop the kind of proficiency that we have. Anyway, I need to get back to my writing. Whilst I do that, head over to doingenglish.com, stick your email address in the box provided, and I will send you every single day at about 8 a.m. Island time a free email packed with all kinds of tips and advice for speaking better English. That's doingenglish.com. I'm off, again, like I said, to write and write and write this bloody PhD thesis, which I've got to get finished. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Where's the button?